Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot for having me here today. I promise to you I won't talk tech. I would actually be quite embarrassed to speaking tech to you because I believe you know much more about that than I do. I run a literally bricks and mortar company, and what I want to talk about is why we put digital in front of our strategy and why we believe that this is an absolute must for buildings materials producer. And my product development people would say, don't say bricks and mortar, because bricks, that's actually red and we produce the white stuff. But anyhow, so first let me start with showing some of our products to you. And I do this for a special purpose, so just bear with me. What you see on the first slide is a classical Ytong block. Ytong, the name is actually Swedish. It's an abbreviation from some unpronounceable, at least for me, Swedish name. That is one of the staple building products for masonry walls. This one here is a Fermacell board. Fermacell boards are being used whenever you need stability. And last not least, that's the most recent acquisition that we did. We purchased Ursa, which is the number 3 in the European insulation market. And glass wool is probably the best value for money insulation product that you can buy. And why do I show you those pictures? There's only one reason, and that is if I show them to investors, they would say, well, you're producing commodity products. And again, my marketing people would kill me for saying that, but yeah, it's quite difficult to differentiate these products. That's actually true. And typically, when you look at these industries, whenever you have products that are commodities, typically you are in a squeeze, your profitability suffers, and that is what investors don't like. Well, here you see some figures, and lack of profitability doesn't seem to be our problem. Now talk to our investors, they obviously always want to have more, that is fine, I want that as well. But we have a high profitability, but the point is, and I will come to that in a second, we don't sell products, we sell solutions to problems. We sell solutions to problems. While we're at this page here, maybe some other key figures that I will come back to during my presentation. We're a company of around about 1.3 billion in turnover. Roughly this year, those are last year's figures, 300 million euro of EBITDA. We sell in 30 countries, we produce in 20. Yeah, so we have some scale. We are a small company, but we have some scale, and I believe that matters. Now, let me talk about how ideally we sell. Let me introduce a few projects that we have done. So the first one that I want to show to you is actually not too far away. It's the headquarters of SEB Bank that is currently being built in Stockholm. And it's a massive building, as you can see, and it's in the downtown of Stockholm. Now, one of the subtleties of our products, and here that is a Fermacell example. If you use Fermacell for the drywalls, you actually need less material because it brings a certain structural integrity with it. The result being you use less material, which in that case meant the reduction of several tens of thousands of trucks that you needed to deliver the product to this downtown construction site. That was a massive problem for the people involved in the building of that project, and that is actually what helped us to convince them to use our product versus somebody else's products. So we understood that problem and we had a solution. That's the first example. The next example, that is a hotel building in Dubai, and the ones who have worked on construction sites know that oftentimes the crane is the bottleneck of the construction site because you're pouring concrete at the top, and at the bottom of the building you're already putting in the installation. And they were under certain time constraints, and again another Fermacell building, Fermacell example. We could speed up the construction time, and the site and the project was no longer in trouble. And again, having understood the time constraints of that building helped us to win that bid here. And the third one is now a Ytong example. Ytong, oftentimes compared to other materials, is when you apply the typical matrix of euro per cubic meter, a more expensive product than our competitors. You can see it here. But that is actually not what matters. What matters is the total cost of ownership, TCO. So the calculation we provide to the investor, to the real estate developer is, look, if you spend more on our product, you gain also more down the road because you use less labor, you use less plaster, you use less reinforcement, and moreover, you have more floor space to sell. And that is really what matters to you because that is your KPI. And by having understood that and by having a sales force that can transport these messages, we won that bid. I haven't used the word digital so far. And again, a few more slides until I talk about digital. But what should have come across by now is that we don't sell building products. We sell solution to construction problems. And I'm a bit embarrassed to show you the next couple of slides because they are not really distinguishing, and I've seen them in many other forms in many of the other presentations today. But it seems to be a common problem, and we like to see this as an opportunity. So, as you know, all the buildings that we're talking about are pretty much unique. They're all prototypes. That is number one. Number two, this is what oftentimes construction sites look like today. And they probably have looked the same like 100 years ago or 200 or 300 or whenever. And it's very different. It's very, very different to what modern manufacturing processes do look like. And sometimes even look like in our industry. So, what do we make out of that? Now, this one is basically the common theme of all the presenters today. So what we do is we use BIM. We first build digitally, and then we build in reality. So that is no news to you. The point is, if you take very subtly what I said, first we build digitally, and then we build in reality. What that means is, basically, digitalization is for us a forward integration into the planning process. That is something that, at least in the industry of masonry producers, is not a common theme. We first plan, then we manufacture the product, and sometimes we even install it on the construction site. Yeah, so we have the full life cycle of the product. Let me become a little bit more concrete what that means. The first digital solution that you see on the upper side, on the left hand, we call Wall as a Service. That's exactly what I just described. We first go into the design because we say, we as the manufacturer of these products, we have a pretty good know-how of the application. So how to best apply it, how to best design a solution using our products should be in our hands, so that we take over. Second, we then take this data from the planning process, feed it into our plans, and do custom produce the products that are being needed specifically for the walls of that construction site. Then we deliver it in time to the construction site, and sometimes in some countries we even install it. That is what we call Wall as a Service. That's a B2B application that works best when we have large customers that we can do business with on a continuous basis. On the right-hand side, you see a more B2C application, so business to consumer application. We call it Building Companion. It is centered around a simplified data model of a single-family house. And around that data model, we try to make the process of building easy for the homeowner. So we help facilitate the selection of materials, hopefully ours. We facilitate the selection of partners, architects, construction companies. Basically, what we already do in the old world before digitalization, we now take to new means with the help of digitalization and also with the help of BIM. And last not least, value apps. It's more an internal help for us, where we facilitate the design, where we facilitate the selling process by having digital tools to enable these processes. Now, part of that is already reality in what we have, what we do. So when I show you these pictures here, all of these buildings, they have been built using these digital technologies that I just talked about. Now, my task is to take this from one country and to replicate it into others. As I said before, we manufacture in 20, we sell in 30, and the markets are very different, and also the technology adaptation of what we offer is different from country to country. And this customization and this tailoring of these offers, that is basically our task when I say we put digital in front of our strategy. On the transformation side, like I said, we are a bricks and mortar company, and happily so, yeah, because you always will have the physical elements of building, and we have around about 100 factories, predominantly in Europe, and that is an asset. We can work with that. I very much like the aspect of being with one leg in the very physical, old-fashioned bricks and mortar world, and on the other hand, with the other leg in the digital space. I think this combination makes it really interesting. But at the same time, what this also means is there's a huge aspect of transformation behind it. Yeah, because I'm running a legacy company, so to say. And on the first hand, what my job is, what the job is of the management team is to get everyone aligned behind this digital strategy. So by now I can say we have pretty much aligned the leadership team behind the strategy. There is people in place that understand what the requirements are and that are capable of shaping this transformation. Number two, we are quite religious about measuring. This applies to the old world, this applies to the new world. I believe it only makes sense if you have the transparency, if it's really working. So it's like a mantra for overall Xella. We want to measure it. We want to measure it, and we want to have the transparency. And last not least, I already alluded to that a little bit. Last not least, size, I believe, matters. If you want to move in that space, if you want to create solutions, you have to have a certain skill set that is easier to attract if you are a bit bigger. You also have to have certain financial means, which is obviously easier to have if you're a little bit bigger. So in other words, economies of scale in the intellectual property side here matter as well. And having said that, it's clearly our strategy to become in our segment, which is predominantly masonry and adjacent materials, number one in digital. Because I believe it really makes a difference and we can be really unique here, not with the products, but with the overall system and the approach that we sell. Thank you.